All right, what's going on, guys? I'm Sebastian, a former student of Fern Creek, graduated in 2011, so well before most of you guys were even in middle school. Gonna help you guys out today, give you a couple tips on some basic car maintenance. First, I'm gonna teach you guys how to change a tire. Very simple stuff. First things first, you wanna get your lug wrench out. You're gonna need to break these lug nuts loose. Easiest thing to do is do it while the car's on the ground. If you do it when the car's lifted, it's gonna, the tire's gonna spin with you. It's gonna be very hard to break the lug nut loose. So start with the tire on the ground, get the lug nut. Obviously you're going left or loose, so you're gonna loosen these up just a little bit, enough where they'll spin, like that. Get you a little loose, nothing to it. Most of your cars are going to have some sort of lug nut set up, lug wrench set up, and a jack in the trunk. If not, you can buy all this stuff at like an AutoZone and O'Reilly's. All right, so second thing, get you a jack. There's all kinds of jacks. You got a typical like floor jack like this that's just going to pump up and lock, or you got a spin jack, which is more common in the cars. In my opinion, a little bit more probably unsafe. Most of these don't cost very much if you can get out to an auto parts store, and they're convenient where you can store them in the trunk. So under the car here, obviously this outside is plastic, so you don't want the jack to touch there, but right through here, I don't know if you can see it, is the frame of the car, and the actual frame is going to be one of the toughest parts of the vehicle. So you line the jack up with the frame and then just begin to lift up like so until you get the tire off the ground. Now most of the time your tire is going to be flat, so it's going to lift up a little early, but still remember, most of the time when you put it back on, you're going to have air in the tire, so you want to lift it up to where even if it was full, it would clear the surface of the ground. Yeah, you can cut that down. All right, after you get it jacked up, you see you got clearance underneath of it, so you know it's going to come off. Just remove the lug nuts, lefty-loosey type deal. Nothing to that, pretty simple stuff. Now most of your Toyotas, Hondas, stuff like that are going to have just a basic lug nut set up and on the studs, so all of them fit. Every now and then you'll have what's called a lock key, so one of the 5 lug nuts will be different. Again, usually in the trunk where the car comes with a lug wrench, it'll have a spare key. You just attach that to the lug nut and pull it off. Your more foreign cars like a Volkswagen or something, they'll have what's called lug studs, so where this lug nut and the stud are connected, so they all come out. A little bit more complicated, but that's kind of the price of having a more expensive top of the line car. You object to anything I'm saying so far?
No, you're good, fam.
pretty spot on. Also, okay, so this is a good time to talk about tire pressure. In every car, most likely, you're gonna have your sticker right here, right inside the car. This is gonna tell you the tire size, 215, 60, 16. So 215 is the height of the tire, 60 is the width of the tire, and then obviously the 16 is a 16-inch wheel. Standard right here is gonna be about 34. I would recommend about 35 pounds of pressure in your standard car tire like this. So right in here on the frame of the car, you can usually find the VIN number and any kind of specifics for the tire right there. So tires are unlike bicycle tires. These are what's known as radials. So when you're airing a tire up, that 35 doesn't sound like a lot, because you would think in a bike tire, you just want to fill it up until it's tight and as full as it can be. Well, radials are meant to sag a little bit. So if you see it kind of on the ground, it looks a little flat, that's okay, because the stiffer the tire is, you're gonna get a stiffer ride. It's gonna wear out the tread a lot faster. So most of your cars are gonna be around 35 pounds. Most of your SUVs and trucks are gonna be around the 40 to 45 pounds, depending on anything you're hauling or the type of truck you ride on. So a lot of times after you get the studs off, if they've just come off the car, they're gonna be a little hard. Nothing you can just, give it a little kick, or if it's out, you just give it a little pull. So now you just pull it off, the tire's off. Pretty simple, standard stuff. If it were flat, you would be obviously looking for a leak of any kind. anything pretty good. Rule of thumb here, if you can see this, anything inside of here, so this is like your top tread, you're going to be okay to fix. A nail, a screw. Here is the sidewall of a tire. Now the sidewall of a tire is the weakest part of a tire. So if anything has punctured the side of your tire, it's going in through here, 9 times out of 10 you're going to need to replace that tire. If you try to patch or plug that tire, you're just making that sidewall that much weaker. And so when you're going down the road and that 35 pounds of pressure that's in that air is trying to come out that leak, and it's more susceptible to blowing out if it's on the side. So anything in the top of the tread, you're good to fix. Anything on the sidewall, that tire is pretty much done for.
And tell them the penny trick.
Yeah, I mean, you can, a lot of times, can you see the tread right here?
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with this tread, if people want to know if you've got life on your tires left, an old school trick is to find a penny, put it in these grooves right here, and if you can still see the head or the middle of Lincoln, is it Lincoln?
Yeah.
Lincoln's face, then you're good. You can also go to like an AutoZone O'Reilly's, and for $1 or $2, you can buy a tread depth monitor, which is just a little gauge you just tack onto, and it shows you how much life your tire has, along with an air gauge. You can buy them for 50 cents to $1. You unscrew this, you unscrew the cap, and it's just like a bicycle. You put it on there, press it, it'll come out the bottom and show you how much air your tire has in there. So that's a good way when you're at an air pump, you're not just sitting there filling it up aimlessly and until it, you know, because they can blow if you put too much in there. So again, this being like a standard 4-door car, you're going to want about 35 pounds of pressure in here. So same deal. After you would have fixed your flat, now your tire's ready to go back on. You would just sort of assess any kind of damage. If your brake bracket here had maybe come off, or any kind of screw, like a little piston screw right here had gone through, you know, you might not want to go back to driving. Or if it was very, very hot, if you could put your hand up to that and it feel like you're on a fire or something, then maybe your brake's locked up due to your brake fluid comes through here. This is the brake line. It cools down the brakes and allows the pads. So what the brake pads do is, this is your brake rotor. Your brake pads in here, they collapse onto the rotor. So when you stop, here, I'll show you. So when you're stopping, your brake pads are actually pressing against that rotor, causing them to stop. If you've ever been going at like a highway speed or fast and you've pressed your brakes and it feels like your steering wheel is shaking crazy like that, that's because you can have what's called a warped rotor. So that means one side of the pad is worn down lower than the other, and instead of having this nice groove here, it kind of is actually doing this. So when that pad is grabbing the rotor, it's shaking too much, and that can cause, you know, premature wear of the brake pad, premature wear of the rotor. It can actually allow the caliper to lock up. It can allow the hose to get pinched, not allowing brake fluid to come through. So a lot of stuff that can happen. So a good rule of thumb, after I've removed the tire, if I'm fixing this flat, kind of just assess. If I can put my hands over here and it's not hot, it's not burning me, you're pretty good. If I put my hands up here and it feels like, you know, you can see smoke or this is on fire or something, I would probably just call a wrecker, call AAA, because you don't want to drive with any kind of busted brake line, caliper, pads, or rotors, because then you run the risk of your brakes going out. The hotter it gets, eventually it's going to send through here and you're not going to have any brakes, and that could be disastrous. So get here, just line them up. Obviously you got the 5 studs, you got the 5 holes here, so you just line them up where you want to go, lift it up a little bit, put it right on there, and you're good to go. Now we're just line them up. Right now you just want to get them hand tight. You can cut now. So when you're putting these studs back on, make sure that they're on there flush. A lot of times, like if you can see, get close to here, if that tire is uneven, see it wants to go left or right, you may think that this is all the way tight now because it looks like there's no more stud for it to run up on. Make sure that you've got that tire as pressed up as you can go, and now you see all that slack that still needs to be screwed in. So just go around with your fingers and just hand tighten them all the way as much as you can go. Don't leave any room where you can't hand tighten. Once they're all tight like this, that's when you can use your wrench, or if you have a drill or anything you're going to do like that. So just hand tight. And a good way to know if you've gone all the way is, see, now this tire, I can't move it. It is flush on there. So what you're going to do, take your lug wrench and just tighten as much as you can while it's in the air. And what you're going to do is go in a star pattern. Everybody knows how to make a star out of this. So I start at the top here, I'm going to go down here. My next one's going to be over here. My next one over here, and my next one over here. The reason we do a star pattern is if I just go from one to the other, then that tire could potentially not be sitting right as far as tightened. So you may have only tightened one side of the tire and left this part loose. So to distribute weight the best part and to make sure it's on there flush, we go in a star pattern. And that goes for a 5 pattern. If it's a big old truck you have, any kind of vehicle you're putting the lugs back on, make sure you're always going in some sort of star pattern. So just get them as tight as you can get right here. And then we're gonna drop this down.
Pull it, yeah. Yep, and then now go down on the, yep, right there.
Right here?
Yep, and then turn it left, slowly.
All right. So then we're gonna go drop that down. Make sure the jack is cleared where you can pull it out. Again, now we're gonna take your lug wrench, tighten once again, because you're gonna have, see, I got a lot of play in here. Go to a star pattern. Don't crank on it. Once it gets to be tight, let it go, because these studs will break off with pressure. So get them tight, but don't overdo it. Don't crank down on as hard as you can, showing off your muscles. So once it's as tight as there, just sort of give it a quick double check. It feels good. Everything is going solid. After that, line your hubcap back on there. Oh, you still recording?
Yep.
So after that, line your hubcap back on there, and then, you know, if it's on there and you feel comfortable that you're going to drive off, I would still recommend driving to some sort of tire shop, a Big O Tires, Ken Towery, something like that, and just pull up, and they can come out with a specified torque wrench, and they can actually just come out and make sure that everything is tight enough. That way, when you're driving down the road, you may have not put it as tight as you want to, and potentially some studs and lug nuts to come out. So that would conclude the changing a tire and putting a tire back on portion of today's lesson.
Tell them about driving on a donut. Good.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're not fortunate enough when you're changing a tire to have another full-size spare tire, 99 times out of 100, what you're gonna have is this. We call it a donut tire because it's clearly not as big as a regular size tire. So a donut tire will do the trick. It'll be fine for you to get off the road and to a shop. It's not a permanent solution. It's much smaller. It's going to distribute the weight of the car a lot worse. If you have a front tire that is out and you have to replace it, best bet is to still take a regular tire and put it on the front and keep your donut on the rear. A lot of times you put that donut on the front, you can really mess up with the steering of a car. And also, when you have a donut tire, it's not recommended to go probably over 35, 45 miles an hour. So like I said, it's not a permanent fix. You don't want to put that on the front of your car, hop on the expressway, because those donuts have been known not to hold up to 65, 70 miles an hour speed limits.